Our Republican Hall of Fame nominee has been a political legend for decades, going back to his start in California all the way through the Reagan White House. Please welcome to introduce our Republican Hall of Fame nominee, Ed Goaz, the president of the Terrence Group and AAPC treasurer.
Thank you very much, and I think better than my words, I'll have a few words after this, but I think that we can't take enough time to explain the body of work of Ed Rollins, so we have it in a video, if we can start that now.
Ed Rollins has had an amazing career, from the boxing ring to Bobby Kennedy, from Ronald Reagan to Ross Perot, from Christy Whitman to knocking off the Speaker of the House. Arianna Huffington when she was a right-winger, Mike Huckabee, and the list goes on and on. No political consultant has had a more interesting and historic life than Ed Rollins, and he keeps on going.
I met Ed Rollins in the early 70s. Ed worked in government, and we played on the same sports teams, and he taught me how to box.
Ed was my boss at the White House. He was more than a boss, he's a great friend.
I met him in the 1980 Reagan campaign in Arlington, Virginia. What Ed brought was an acute mind. He read a lot, he knew his stuff, but he had a sense that, look, there's ideas and there's gentlemanliness, but this is also a fight.
When I first went to work for him, Rollins said, now, the first rule is don't get me, don't get Rollins in any trouble. And then he said, because I've survived 5 years with Atwater. And of course, Lee and I were great friends, and we had a big laugh. But yeah, did I ever get him in any trouble? Yeah, but let me tell you, Ed didn't need any help.
When I found out that Ed Rollins was coming to be our big boss, I thought, oh no, he's got a lot of experience. It kind of scared me a little bit, but it was a wonderful opportunity for me personally to learn a lot from a true professional.
Ed Rollins and I were on a plane together. I had worked for Jimmy Carter, Ed had worked for Reagan. There we are, reading the same book. We spent the entire flight then from Denver to Dulles talking politics and drinking Jack Daniels. And we've been friends ever since.
He knew that if our guys were going to hold office and put in good public policy, that first he had to get elected, and he was about winning.
I think Ed was standing for principled leadership, and I think he stood for strong policy positions for Republicans. Got in trouble for it a little bit, but he did the right thing, and he counseled candidates to be principled leaders.
Rollins told the people, Congressman, don't be loyal to the White House first. Be loyal to your constituents first. Be loyal to what you said you were going to do first.
You can talk to Ed about anything, and he's a great listener. And he'll tell you exactly what he thinks, not what he thinks you want to hear.
I witnessed Ed Rollins' campaign expertise unfold in the '84 Reagan election. I mean, it was a strategic victory like no other. I mean, I think they won all but one state, and that was Minnesota. And Ed was ticked off about that.
When George Nethercutt beat Speaker, beat Tom Foley, this was enormously symbolic. And it wasn't easy, it wasn't automatic. Without Ed Rollins, it wouldn't have happened.
Ed Rollins brought a presidential-style campaign team to our campaign to try to unseat a sitting speaker for the first time since 1860. So he brought top-quality people. He was the conductor of the symphony, and he was a masterful conductor. It was sweet music in 1994.
One of the problems of our profession, the political consulting profession, is that we care too often about getting to Tuesday night and not enough about Wednesday morning. Too much about winning the election, not about governing. Ed Rollins has always been an exception to that rule. Ed's being inducted into the Political Consultants Hall of Fame for a couple of reasons. First of all, he's old enough to be inducted. I mean, the guy's an old man. I mean, he's like me.
I thought this was AARP when they first asked me here.
Ed's not old, but I think getting him inducted into this Hall of Fame makes him feel old, and he's not. And he's just as vital today as he was 20 years ago when we worked together.
More importantly, he's being inducted because of the principles, his character, his ability, the fact that he practices his profession with honor. These are the attributes that we should recognize as a profession.
I think there are very few people in this country who have the depth of experience that Ed does, who has spent so many years in the trenches, and that depth of experience gives him a different perspective than so many people who have worked only in one aspect or the other. And so I'm thrilled that he's getting into the Hall of Fame.
He's a strategic thinker. Yeah, the technology and the method of communication changes dramatically as we get to the cutting edge, but the message doesn't. The strategy doesn't.
Ed Rollins deserves to be in the Consultants Hall of Fame for a simple reason. He may be the wisest man I've ever met in politics.
He has become, I believe, even more of an important voice for a Republican Party. He brings objectivity on the one hand, but he brings a fierce passion on the other.
Going back to the 1960s, Ed Rollins has given his heart and soul to this country. He is humble in victory and good-natured in defeat.
The best managers are leaders, and Ed Rollins is a leader.
Ed, you're the best political consultant that any candidate or friend could have. You've been loyal to me and my family, and you never change. You're always constant, and that's a valuable gift for any friend or for any candidate for public office.
And I've had the honor of working in many campaigns, George Nethercutt, Christy Whitman, and a variety of different campaigns. I want to start off with kind of a quote from his book. Once a champion amateur boxer, and most people don't know this, but he fought almost 300 boxing matches over the years, only losing 2, I believe, in that time. He brings a pugnacious spirit of a born fighter to everything he does, never shy about his opinions. He now delivers the kind of no-take prisoners honesty for which he is notorious. Now, that was almost 20 years ago now, and he is still living that way today. I first met Ed 30 years ago when he was political director at the Reagan White House. I was actually chief of staff for an incoming congressman. Both the congressman and I were in our 20s. He was just an amazing person. Over the years, Ed's gone from being someone that I looked up to with awe to someone I worked with and considered a great mentor, to someone I today consider to be a dear and close friend. Charming, irreverent, self-effacing, insightful, patriotic. All these words describe Ed Rollins and fits him like a glove. And if you're not careful, it might fit him like a boxing glove. For those that know him, he also has a caustic wit, one that sometimes makes you laugh and one that sometimes makes you duck for cover. I was honored to be mentioned in his book that he wrote, but I was very pleased to have it be a very short mention, if you know what I mean, because the more he said, the less you wanted to read about yourself in that book. I also have a little story to tell about Ed. About 13 years ago, I was getting married and asked Ed to be one of my groomsmen. And my wife is almost 2 decades younger than I am, so she had her bridesmaids that were people she graduated from high school with and people she graduated from college with. And I had my partners, and I had my brothers, and I had Ed Rollins. Well, right after we finished the wedding and we were taking pictures and we were stepping down from the altar, Ed Rollins in a very loud voice says, "Why is it I feel like I'm at a father-daughter dance?" Now, if it hadn't been for the fact that I was getting married that day, that would have been the best thing that happened to me that day, just looking over and seeing my mother-in-law's expression. It's been said that Ed Rollins is an American original, a power-punching, street-smart insider who loves politics and his country with equal fervor. No truer words have ever been said or written about Ed Rollins, and it is my distinct honor to present him with the Hall of Fame.
Thank you so much. This is truly, truly a great honor, and Senator McGovern, if I'd have known you wanted to come to the White House, I'd have invited you over. I had the old Nixon hideaway office. We could have drank a little booze and listened to the tapes. And it's so great to see my dear friend on this side, Mr. Viguerie, who did what you guys did for us. Wyatt Stewart, another great friend who was here earlier. I remember when we first came to Washington in 1981, Richard gave us a house. And he did take that $1 million. He had this big, gigantic plantation out there. It's cost probably $4 or $5 million. And he says to my mentor, Lynn Nofziger, he said, Lynn, you won't believe this. He said, I mailed 85 million pieces of mail last year. And Lynn said, all that mail in 10,000 mailboxes. So I know how you guys do it. It's an honor to be in this organization, and it's an honor to be honored by this organization, but most of all, it's an honor to be honored with you two gentlemen who obviously have done many, many meaningful things with your lives. I just wanted to be powerful and rich, and got to be neither. The great thing about being in this business, and I say this to all of us, you get to meet some fascinating people. You get to help some extraordinary people. I decided when I was about 18 or 19 years old, and I drafted my first direct mail piece. I grew up in California, I said, nobody's ever going to do this to me. I'm never going to be a candidate. And I think to those of us that chose to not be candidates, but to basically try and help candidates, I have the greatest respect in the world for those who do run for office and for those that we do help elect. We're sort of like a lifeguard. We pull them out of the water when they're struggling. We try and make it better. And I think at the end of the day, we make the country better. As I have watched the great freedoms that we have and the great freedoms that other countries want to have like us, so much of it comes because of this profession. As I said earlier, it's a profession that's maligned by many. At the end of the day, none of us go in it for the money. Most of us don't make money. At the end of the day, we work awesome hours. We always have to struggle through this process. You always have to each cycle convert some new candidate and convince them that you know more than they do because you've done it 100 times. And it's a teaching process, and it's an extraordinary process, and you know, you get to elect some people you're very proud of, and unfortunately you lose with some people that you wish could be elected. There's a lot of bodies on the wayside along the process here who would be great members of Congress and what have you. And the losses hurt. I hate to have my boxing record laid out because I'm 50 pounds and 50 years beyond my boxing career, but I remember those 2 losses more than I remember all the wins. And each and every one of us remembers every detail of the losses. The wins are for those who win. Those of us go back into the trenches, struggle again to find and recruit and make good candidates, and we make the process better. But the extraordinary part of the process is that, and the great freedoms that we have as a country, is, you know, we don't get shot at. We can challenge presidents, we can challenge speakers, we can elect members of Congress, we can take on any cause, and we are protected by the great freedoms that we have here. And so each and every one of you that are the contributors to this thing, you know, my only counsel is mentor some young people who come along. I had wonderful mentors, Lynn Nofziger, Jess Unruh, Bob Monaghan, people that I worked for in the early days of my career who helped me and taught me. And I've tried to do that with people that I've worked with over the years. And I think that's the most important lesson. This is not a profession that you go find a book. I remember the late Dick Darman saying to me one time in the White House, he said, give me a book on something like this. I want to be involved in this campaign. I said, Dick, we don't write books about the business because someone like you who thinks you're smarter than the rest, anyways, would read the book and want to run the campaigns. This is a self-taught, and this is an onward process that we're taught by others. And each time we learn a little bit more about the business, each time we learn a little bit more about the American public, which is the most important part. So I'm very flattered by this award, and it means so much to me, and it means so much to me to be in the hall with such great men as the 2 of you. Thank you very much.
Congratulations to all 3.